Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for tuning in today. Please take a quick second and give this video a like. If you want to leave a comment or question, I'll be happy to get back to you. And if you're not subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it. Alright, so today I want to talk about this photograph, another King Conan by Mezco Toys. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, the skeleton that I used in that video was for Mythic Legions, and the horse was also Mythic Legions. Balius is the name of the actual horse. And the scale on those is actually a little bit big. I don't know technically if it's considered 12th scale or not, but it is a little bit big, but it still works with 12th scale. If you stand a figure up next to it, a 1/12 scale figure, they do look a little bit small, but I don't know, I find that when I put them on the horse, take the photograph, they seem to look fine. And then also, for those that didn't see my previous video on it, this is one of my fake trees that I made. Show you real quick as last time. Wire in the middle, aluminum foil, quick drying clay, a little bit of paint, good to go. Leave some holes in the top for the fake foliage. Pretty simple stuff. So for this video, yeah, I used the horse, the King Conan from Mezco, and then I used the skeleton and my two fake trees. And then I used, again, I used my television screen as my background. And something actually really cool I discovered, I don't even know exactly the name of the program. I think it has something to do with the Microsoft Copilot thing or something. But it's an AI thing. You know, a lot of times I go on Google or whatever and look for photographs to use on my background. And also, I always kind of wonder the legality of that. I mean, those are technically somebody else's property. I mean, I guess most of it's probably not really copywritten or anything, but I don't know. I always wonder if there ever could be any kind of beef. I guess if you were shooting, you know, these photographs for a company, you wouldn't want to use something like that. You would want to go on, you know, one of these sites that, you know, pay for, like Envato Elements or something, and use stock photographs so that you have, you know, licensing rights to use. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's probably not really an issue. People that are doing this just for fun as a hobby, you know, as a hobby, like the rest of us are. But anyways, with this program I found through, like I said, I think it's something to do with Microsoft Copilot. It's an AI program. And I was looking for, this is actually a background that I used on a previous Conan. If you saw my Conan photograph where he's kind of sitting up against the tree in front of the campfire, it's actually the same background I used for that. I just used a different part of it. But anyways, in this program, you know, it's, if you fiddle around with AI stuff, you're probably familiar with it. I just typed in something like spooky forest or whatever, and it generated that photograph for me, which I thought was cool because number one, it's unique, right? Like that photo shouldn't exist anywhere else, and obviously, you know, there's nothing to worry about as far as like copyright issues goes. So that's what I use for this background. And that also brings up another question. I wonder how other people feel about AI in the artwork world. I do love that Instagram has that feature now where if you notice at the top of somebody's post, a lot of times it'll say up there in like the upper left hand corner or whatever, and it actually seems to like rotate or something. If there's a song or something there, it'll rotate between that and whatever, and it'll, you know, it says created with AI or used AI or whatever. I think that's kind of a cool feature. So yeah, so I did technically use AI to create this background that I put on my television screen. I didn't, you know, when I edited the photo, there's no AI usage in that whatsoever. Just wanted to make that clear so people don't think that I was saying that I used AI to like replace the background in the photograph or something like that. Like I said, it's literally the photograph that I put on my television screen, which is shot then obviously in camera. And speaking of camera, my settings on this one were actually very similar to my last one. I used my 85mm lens. I used an aperture of f8. My shutter speed was just a tiny bit faster. It was 1/10 of a second shutter speed, and my ISO was 400 as well. Also, I know somebody's going to ask this, so I'm going to point this out real quick. Tried to start adding a little bit of stuff to my background. don't know. I mean, I don't mind the clean look with the green. I kind of decided on color-wise I like the green. just because it stands out the best amongst the colors that I use in the background. So I think I'm going to stick with the green. It's not that green's my favorite color or anything like that. I just like the look of it overall. But anyways, so yeah, that's one of my fake trees over there on the other side of me. And then this little light, this is a cool little light, right? Try to get it without the lights in it. Let me move it forward. Maybe that'll work. Anyways, this is actually something my wife bought me. I don't even know what the brand is, to be honest, but it's just a little light, that some kind of little LED light. And it just has a couple settings, low, high, and then what I've been keeping on is this, where it actually pulsates. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool, and it puts out a pretty decent amount of light. I've not used it in photographs or anything like that, but I've been thinking about, you know, trying to find a use for it. And I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. I kind of like that. I think I might stick with that. Kind of build on it. We'll see where it goes from there. So, anyways, yeah. In this scene, like I said, I had the characters, the forest, the television screen on the background for my forest. I used a couple of wires. I used one for the horse, and I used one for the skeleton. And then I go into Photoshop and I just remove those wires in Photoshop. And I get a lot of questions on that, which, I don't know, to me seems kind of odd, right? If you ask somebody how they're removing their flight stands or whatever, I feel like that's 9 times out of 10 is going to be the answer, Photoshop. I guess there's probably other programs out there now that do that. Maybe that's specifically what people are wanting to know. But for me, when I remove flight stands or wires, I go into Photoshop and I do one of two techniques. There is a tool, and the name of it is escaping me, but it's a simple tool. It's like an object removal tool or something like that. It's really simple. You basically paint over, say, the wire, and Photoshop does an incredible job of just erasing it. It's actually pretty awesome, and it's a fairly new tool. There was something similar to it in the past, but I never got a good result from that. So sometimes I would have to use a different techniques. I had a few different techniques I used to use, but now, man, that tool is so good. It's 99% of the time just works perfect, is what I would say. And then I do still use another technique, which honestly is probably still the best technique, but then sometimes I can't use this. It's called photo stacking. And what that simply is, okay, so first off, when I really can't use it, if I'm using fog effects or like my atmosphere aerosol spray, then I can't really do the photo stacking. I'll explain that in a second. But all photo stacking is, so let's say I've got my scene all set up, right? Take my photographs. I'm happy with how it looks, right? And let's say I've got my one character, Superman, let's say, on a flight stand, and you can see the flight stand in the shot, right? All I do is I take Superman out of the scene, right? Now all my lighting, everything is still the same. Take another photograph of that same scene, and then you're able to go into Photoshop with those two photos, right? You layer them basically one on top of the other, and then you use a mask, and then you literally can paint out that flight stand or wire or whatever. And what it's doing is it's showing now the layer underneath it, which is the photograph you took without the character in the scene anymore, right? And so it basically, you know, does a flawless job of eliminating that flight stand. But going back to what I said, if I'm using, you know, the fog machine or the aerosol spray, the problem with that is, let's say I use the fog machine, right? I take a picture of my character, right? And then I remove the character, excuse me, and I take another photograph with the fog again. The problem is that fog is never going to look exactly identical in two photographs, right? And so it makes it a lot more difficult to do. I've tried it in the past, and it doesn't look as good. And so in those cases, I just use the object removal tool, remove it, and be done with it. Yeah, so that's the two different techniques that I use. I use the object removal the majority of the time. Times when I definitely won't, though, is if, for example, I had a Superman Hulk shot I did once, and my whole Hulk figure is so big and bulky, I don't have flight stands or wires that'll really hold him. He's a pain to have to get to hold up. So I had him laying on his back, I just had some of my big box crates or something like that underneath them, and so they're big bulky objects, and I don't even think I used the object or tried the object removal tool because I don't think it would have done a good job because I was using a background scene, and it just I don't think it would have worked very well with that. And so I did the photo stacking technique for that because it just works, you know. So it just depends, but it depends on the photograph, what you've got going on in the scene. But like I said, if you use Photoshop, the object removal tool is awesome. And I will say this too: this isn't like a, well, I guess it is kind of a plug. I don't have any affiliation with Adobe or any of their products, but I will say that, you know, I use Lightroom and Photoshop, and I use them in that specific order. And if I didn't have access to those programs, I don't think I would do this, man. Because, like, you know, if you look at a raw photograph, any of you guys who edit understand that, I guess. But if you look at a raw photograph versus your edited version, you know, just for what I do in, say, Lightroom, it's night and day difference. You know, it's such a necessity this day and age with photo editing. I do all of my, you know, color corrections and you know, basically all my adjustments in Lightroom, and then I use Photoshop, like I've just talked about, to remove flight stands or wires or whatever. And then if I want to add any kind of effect, you know, I like to add my rain or my snow digitally because it's just easier, less messy. You know, if I want to add like maybe a more realistic flame or something, I'll do that, or embers, you know, stuff like that I'll add in there. I don't ever go too heavy on Photoshop. It just depends on the scene. Sometimes I'll use it more than others. Sometimes I'll get over in there and don't really do nothing. Maybe remove a wire and, you know, add my logo, and then maybe sometimes I'll, you know, do an adjustment curves or something like that. And that's, you know, sometimes that's it. Sometimes it's super quick in Photoshop. All right, so anyways, with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and jump over to the behind the scenes.